All throughout history, people have dedicated creative works to their partners. Poetry, statues, monuments, or even buildings. These artworks preserve the memory of their relationship and their story long after they're gone. Nocturnals is my version of a love letter to my partner Pablo, as I'm not a carpenter, or a poet, or a great artist, but I can put together a story in the form of a video game, and that's exactly what I did. This video will be looking into the development of my short indie game Nocturnals, covering the early stages, concept art, cut content, and even what's next for Cowboy Toad Games. My goal was to create a game that replicated the style of games I grew up playing, games that had a huge impact on my life and filled me with inspiration and ideas for ways to tell heartfelt stories that people can connect with. I love choice-based adventure games, and I'm sad to see that they aren't as common anymore, but I do know that there is a huge underserved audience for them. I myself being one of them, of course. And so I also sought to create a game that I wanted to play, not just a game I thought others would enjoy. I also wanted to create something that was sort of a time capsule of things in my life as a teenager. All throughout the game there are references to things that are very personal to me. Names I recognise, numbers that mean something to me. Everything you see in game is there for a reason, and is a reference to something in my life. Ted and Diego are even based almost entirely on myself and Pablo, sharing our actual relationship dynamic, our clothes, and our appearance. This is another reason actually why I chose to have us voice the main characters. Not because I thought we were good actors, but because I wanted to try and capture the nuances and chemistry in our conversations that we have.
That is what I would say.
I'd done a lot of research with developing characters, especially problems that occurred with self-insert characters from other writers, and usually involved the author being unable to create realistic character flaws of themselves. So I did end up having to get a bit personal and think of my own character flaws and insecurities and insert them into Ted. I can't be alone again. Something I thought was quite funny though was how I actually found it quite hard to come up with the flaws for the Pablo character, and early versions of him felt kind of like a Mary Sue. But that was generally because I couldn't think of any flaws that he actually has. So I invented some insecurities for his character to help make him have relatable points of character development.
I just think, if we see our goodbyes outside of Roadside, then we can at least end it on a nice note, you know? I don't want to let my past interfere.
It was also very important to me to represent these characters and the fact that they are two males that could potentially share a romantic interest in a normal and natural light. Their sexualities are never mentioned in game, and it is never a plot point or something that the characters have to get over. There's already too many stories like that in media, and I would love to see these types of relationships become normalised within stories, and hopefully this could positively impact younger generations and their view on these types of relationships. And maybe even some people will be able to recognise themselves in these characters in a way that I couldn't really growing up. One last point is that this game was made with zero budget. Other than the Construct developer license and Steam developer fee, I didn't spend a penny to create the art or animations, and I was lucky enough to have Pablo compose the music for free for me. And also I used free tools and software to make the videos and draw all of the art by hand. And I'm not going to tell you what I used to draw the art in. I think you'd all be quite horrified.
Well, you're saying that you should put a video of you doing it.
I'm not going to show.
No, because otherwise that will be so bait. You have to tell them. You can't just say, and I'm not going to tell you, and then actually not tell them.
I began my game development journey with Scratch, like most kids in the UK. You do Scratch in computer class in year 5 or around there, which for Americans is 4th grade. I instantly fell in love and downloaded it when I got home. This was when Scratch was only Scratch 1.4, and you'd be working with bitmaps and a very limited project size, but that was enough for me as an 8-year-old. What you're seeing now is actually my first Scratch project, which I remember proudly showing my class in show and tell. It was basically just my attempt at creating a Sims game. My first choose-your-own-adventure game I created when I was 11. It was called Scratching Dawn, and it was basically a parody of Until Dawn. I got my friends at school to voice act in it, and I think even one girl just recorded her lines over a phone call, which compared to everyone else it just sounds so bad.
What? I'm being mean? Thanks for being there for me, Scratch.
I remember this game did very well and gained some traction on Scratch. I began making other story-based games, all essentially just rip-offs of my favourite games with some unique characters here and there. My last one was a remake of Scratching Dawn. By this point I had pretty good practice with how choose-your-own-adventure games functioned, in terms of keeping track of variables, and also by this point I was able to understand the limits of what I was capable of creating as an individual, and I began to outgrow Scratch's constraints. I met Pablo when he was 16 and I was 17. We were both at college and he was the first person I met in real life who had a similar background to me of creating games. We both had really good chemistry from the get-go. We actually found out that Pablo had played some of my Scratch games years before we even knew each other, which is just crazy. I started developing a Flash game called One Last Pit Stop around about this time, and it could be said that this is the earliest version of Nocturnals. It was about two characters, based on us, that had to survive together in a post-apocalyptic world. It was a point-and-click choice-based game that involved solving puzzles, and it was very basic in its gameplay, and I never actually finished it. However, when I was stuck on some ideas for character bonding moments in Nocturnals, or just puzzle sequences, I actually went back to One Last Pit Stop and took some of the elements from this and put it into Nocturnals, such as this numbers on the signs puzzle, and also this moment where they mess around with some glasses that they found.
Are you sure you should be driving if you're short-sighted? It's not like there's other cars on the road. Try these. Beautiful. I don't think these are right for my eyes. They're probably for reading. Still suits you though.
After I gave up with One Last Pit Stop, due to the constraints of it running in a web browser, Pablo introduced me to Construct, which was obviously a huge step up from Scratch, but was still an object-oriented programming language like I was used to. He helped teach me the basics and I got started on creating the first version of Nocturnals. The original script was more similar to the final version compared to those that were in between, except the difference was that you played as Diego instead of Ted. The opening part of the game was pretty much the same, albeit less detailed. The voice actor for Mia, Leah Pollard, actually had recorded all of her lines for this version, and I just used them again for the final version, which I started working on a year later.
Stop. Reach for your gun and I'll shoot. I guarantee I'm better with a gun than you, especially if you're wasting bullets to shoot through glass doors.
Look, I don't know what you want from me.
The keys to the truck. The one you just drove in here with.
I haven't done anything to you.
It's just how it is. Got no other choice. You think your situation is bad? This place was my home. Everything I built here. My friends. I need to get out of here before it comes back. I'm sorry that involves you.
Around this time, me and Pablo started uni, and development on this project came to a halt. Towards the end of my first year at uni, I wanted to continue making this project again. I'd created many different versions of the game, some of which were completely unrecognisable to the final version, and Pablo helped me realise that I should just go back to the first version of the story I had, and he helped me fix up the dialogue and refine the story. He also created a colour palette for me, because I'm colourblind and was mixing up horrible colours, so the colour palette helped me keep it consistent. Now as for cut content, there are still some leftover layouts, which are basically environments in Construct, from previous versions of the story that I left in the finished game, which you can see here. This town in the intro was originally called Bosfigo, and I changed up the name so that Bosfigo could be where Diego came from instead. Something last minute that I had to cut out because I didn't have enough time to develop it properly was the nightmare sequence that Ted would have had when he went to sleep in the high school part, and you would have seen a glimpse of Lulu the gibbon that had been talked about earlier. It would have served to represent his fears about Diego in a way that I won't explain any further in case I ever want to do something like that again. But I'm really sad that I couldn't animate a gibbon running around because I think that would have been quite fun. As for the constraints that I found whilst developing Nocturnals, I'd say one of them is how 3D is still a really early feature in Construct. It used to be a game engine just for 2D games, or at least it was back when I began development. It's why everything in the game is flat and looks like a billboard. I promise that those flat truck tyres weren't an artistic choice, but I do think it kind of gave the game its own unique style, and I'm glad I had this creative constraint. However, with 3D being an early feature in Construct, it meant that I didn't have much support when it came to problems that I faced. There were people like Smad on the Discord who were so helpful to me and Pablo, as well as the Construct community on Discord, who would help me problem solve any of the problems I came across. Another thing that was quite difficult was having to animate all 159 cutscenes by hand, frame by frame. It was a grueling process which would take up most of the day, and I also had a strict schedule which meant I had to do one a day, and I would end up feeling quite awful if I went off schedule. I definitely couldn't do it by myself again, and I believe for future projects we're going to make cutscenes run in-game and create tools that allow us to make the process faster and easier. Something else that I felt was quite difficult was that when I would watch videos on YouTube about developing games as a solo developer, none of them really applied to the type of game that I was creating. They seemed to imply that you shouldn't attempt to do such a game, like it wasn't possible and would lead to disappointment. And most of the tips and advice catered towards 2D platformer type games, or games that at least lacked any cinematic elements. So I'm proud of the fact that I was able to complete this game, and that I can basically say to anyone else looking to create something like this that it is possible. I think it just requires a lot of determination. So if you're looking to make your own game like this, make sure you really care about the story you want to tell, as I think that, and Pablo, is what made me never give up on this project. Here I will be showing a collection of concept art / sketches I drew at the start of the project. Art which I never expected to show, keep in mind, and that's why it's so rough. But you can skip past this part if you just want to get to the part where I talk about the future of Cowboy Toad Games. As for the future of Cowboy Toad Games, Pablo's been hard at work setting up a company for us, and we're so excited to create more games and to tell more stories. Pablo is interested in creating systemic type games as well, or games that generate their own stories rather than pre-written ones. And of course, what many of you have been asking since you've played Nocturnals, will there be a sequel? The answer is, I'll try my best to make it happen. I have so many more stories that I would like to tell within the world of Nocturnals. Longer stories and more gameplay too. But obviously, nothing is certain or confirmed. But just know I'm just as excited as you guys are to have more Nocturnals content. But thank you all so much for engaging with my game. I'm so grateful for all the lovely fan art and messages that we receive. And I'm so grateful for all the feedback and criticism we receive too, as this will only make our games better. Thank you for watching my video, and be sure to follow us on Instagram and X, and join the Discord to receive more updates about Nocturnals and the future of Cowboy Toad Games. Yeah, I shot a woman. Okay, wait. Okay, hang on.
I don't think that's the right line. No! Right?
Yeah.
I've never seen someone get shot.
Don't give up hope.
Don't give up hope.
The zoo was run entirely by kids.
Wait, is this in the script?
Stay still.
Are you making it or is that in the script?
No one there was older than 15 at most.
Wait, this is real, Max. Show me the script.
Is Ted supposed to be a himbo?
Oh my god.
Are you a doctor? Did you stitch, but you stitched up, does that mean you're a doctor? No, I just know.
Please. Do with the please, do more of a desperate. Sorry, I don't.
Please!
Yeah.
Wow.
Um.
Okay.